Hey guys, this is the Ecron Writer here, welcoming you to another one-shot from my F-Zero fanfics that crosses over with Yu-Gi-Oh! And aside from Falcon's followers and Cold as Ice, as well as ending it all, this is another crossover fic. And this one introduces 3 laps in a row of the F-Zero GP Legend anime. Specifically lap 9, 10, and 11, known as chain reaction, as well as the promise and double jeopardy. So these 3 episodes are featured in one fanfic that I've come up with years ago, but I just didn't have the motivation to write it until recently. So let's get this thing started, shall we? Alright, here we are. A Trilogy of Tension. This is actually a crossover series for the 3 laps. Yes, you heard right. There were 3 episodes in a row within the F-Zero anime that gave me so much tension, and these fanfics shall describe them all. This is just a series of scenarios in which F-Zero GP Legend crosses over with the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, aside from Cold as Ice and Falcon's followers. Indeed, there are 3 segments here. Lap 1. It was during a sunset at the end of Tinsel's shift, but just as she was heading for home, she once saw Rick at Memory Park, despondent, as he watched the boats go by. She heard that this reminded him of Haruka as they went on a balmy cruise together 150 years ago, and Haruka herself enjoyed watching them sail across the harbor beside the city line. It was sort of a hobby and became his as well. She once asked Rick why he was so down. Could it be on account of the freakish accident back in the dangerous Mute City race? When the Dragon Bird crashed beside Zoda, which in turn hit Jody next to it? He felt so ashamed about that sudden chain reaction ever since. But it wasn't the only thing that was bothering him. He still couldn't get his vengeance for Zoda off his mind, which was who he was aiming for. If only Jody didn't get in the way. He also told Tinsel about the secret he discovered about Jody being a cyborg after the incident 5 years ago, in which she and her brother Andy Summer got fatally injured during a shootout. To Tinsel, it wasn't the first time she'd heard of a police officer who's half human, as she found out about another detective named Del Spooner who had a grudge against robots that were attempting to dominate over humanity in Chicago back in 2035. I just made a little pop culture reference here. I'll explain later. So to her, it wasn't too big of a surprise. He also remembered Jody's point of advice. I hate what Zoda did, but we have a bigger mission than just stopping him, and that's to destroy the organization he works for. She said that he must remember the good things in life too, and he must never forget them, nor be consumed with payback. Believe it or not, Tinsel reluctantly agreed with that, as they must fight for the things and the people they cherish so much, and it's natural to forget the smaller things in life. She vowed that she'll be by his side so he won't go astray while facing the demonic monster. Since Jody was well enough to take her repaired Whitecap for a test run, where in reality she was heading to the abandoned maximum security prison in planet Alcatraz, she hopes to find answers in looking to how she can defeat Zoda. Eventually, Rick and Tinsel came back to headquarters. He asked Clash where she went, and he said she took her machine. The Dragon Bird followed the signal emitting from it, leading to a warp gate. Tinsel actually tagged along, but only several feet away to avoid detection. To her horror, though, she realized they'd headed to the homeworld of her worst fear, Whiteland. Thankfully, there wasn't a deadly 50-foot gap, she was unable to cross 13 years ago. Her body temperature dropped several degrees, and it wasn't the below freezing climate, since the comet was able to adjust in tepid and frigid environments, but intense fear. Her body began to quiver and break out in a cold sweat, remembering the fatal incident. Her mind fogged for a moment. Then, as she saw the dragon bird's backlight starting to fade, she slowly trod in toward it. Above the snowy horizon, she saw a distinctive spaceship. It was the same one Zoda often used for his assaults, even the one when he invaded the Galaxy Platoon soon after winning that set of Zero race and reveling in his destruction, even scaring away the weak leader John Tanaka. I never liked him in the anime. I wish he was more serious like it was in GX. When she recovered, she noticed it shot a volley of bullets, and Jody was under fire. Rick was also heading toward it, making Tinsel alarmed. She immediately stepped on the gas as Rick left the cockpit, took off his denim jacket, making him more exposed to the deadly climate, and having his body covering her, while the malicious madman continued to rain down more bullets. Tinsel hurriedly shot out the comet's ice jets up toward the gunship's underside. A portion above the stem became frozen almost instantly, showing a crystallized bright blue hue. Knowing Zoda's onslaught had been disabled, he soared away from the hapless duo. However, to Tinsel's shock, they managed to survive, unscathed. It seemed as though the comet had also frozen the battleship's bullets, and he acted more like hailstones instead. Realizing Jody and Rick were all right, they headed back to Mute City together. But not before Tinsel, who was still shaken up, activated her telecom. "We're gonna need backup," she muttered. Sure enough, the transmission reached Domino City, in Yugi's and Solomon's home. Inside his bedroom, where it was still nighttime, Yugi picked it up. Since it had a different time zone, it was much later than in Mute Cities, and the kid was a little groggy. Tinsel apologized for calling him so early, but they noticed that Dark Million had recently raised the bar. These should be taken much more seriously, and he and Joey must use their dual monsters as outside help besides Falcon. They knew he wasn't very reliable on account he's a bounty hunter and thus is usually unreachable. They knew a war was coming, and since he, Yami, and Joey are currently free from dueling since the championship in Battle City, she hopes they'd be available. She believed there could be a warp gate from Japan to Mute City, however, she was never sure where. They wished Captain Falcon would know its whereabouts and assist them on their mission. Ah, finally, got this lap out of the way. This scenario has always been in my mind for years, ever since I first saw GP Legend in the English version of Chain Reaction. Although I never liked the order of episodes as it was used for lap 6, which is irrelevant since Miss Killer was shown and her debut's 2 episodes away, which you would see in Vulnerability of a Hero. So instead it should be around lap 9 since she's been introduced. Tanaka's tirade on Rick winning races would be relevant, and it would start Dark Million's more serious plans. Hence, in order to cope with the anxieties, I introduced Yugioh again, since cold as ice. Speaking of which, I figured the Silver Comet making its move at a very cold planet would make the most sense, allowing Zoda's gunship to retreat. I assumed that Zoda flew off thinking that Rick and Jody had been shot. Yet, they never shown any signs of injury at all, not even hypothermia. Well, except you would get a brief vision of the shoulder blade, Jody's shot shoulder blade, with the exoskeleton sticking out a little. Although just recently I figured the reason why was because Jody's a cyborg while Rick seems a bit accustomed to the cold, since he seems hot-blooded, and may have traits related to the vermilion bird, because, he's Ryo Suzaku, so obviously he has to have traits to the the guardian of summer in Asian culture. On the subject of cyborgs, I made a reference to the flick I, Robot, where Detective Dill Spooner holds a grudge against robots, even against Sonny. Never liked him that much either. Always reminds me of Jodie Ever, even her ambition in the task force. Both sources debuted in 2004, after all. Well, F-Zero GP Legend on the Fox box, and I, Robot. So, best to put two and two together. But it's not over yet. I still got 2 more laps to go. So here we are. Alright, here's lap 2 where I add elements from Yu-Gi-Oh! As Tinsel uses its monsters again. Only this time it's during an emergency while an F-Zero race is taking place. Lap 2. And this is the events of The Promise, aka Roger and Drac if you live in Japan. So, this began a week later from that incident in Planet Alcatraz and when Tinsel called Yugi for outside assistance. He and Joey received the alert and knew that Dark Million needed to be taken more seriously this time around. With the Battle City competition over, they had more free time and Yugi has spent more time with Taya, while Mai kept turning Joey down. Never liked Mai that much. She just arrived at the Falcon house, ready to start her shift in the Elite Mobile Task Force, having the sweet coffee along with her best friend Rick. They also met Lucy, Bert, as well as the young kid, Alias. The same one Tinsel, Lucy, and Rick met when the latter was chasing after Samurai Goro, which you would see in Samurai Returns. This time, the tyke was scared on receiving heart surgery next week. Then a bodybuilder showed up. To Bert, his intergalactic delivery arrived, exotic mangoes, and he introduced the guy as Roger Buster. He has heard of the boy's plight, and he mentioned the delivery was exclusively for him, and that the Fake Star race is coming up very shortly. He and Rick decided to participate and win for Alias. Nevertheless, he's still pretty nervous of the procedure, even though his mom said it'll save his life in the long run and make him stay healthier than before. Roger offered to win it for the sake of giving him the exotic Dorea mangoes he loves so much, while Rick volunteered to win it as a promise to Alias and as an incentive if he would take the surgery. You have to take risks if you want to be an F-Zero racer. Alias lightened up and accepted Rick's proposition. Then let's have a handshake and make it official. They did just that. I tried to remember some excerpts from the episode I'd seen twice on the Fox box, The Promise, but sadly, a recording can't be found. What the heck? It should be. Tinsel rooted for Rick to take the lead, but sadly she was unable to register as the Fake Star Cup was already overbooked. Aw, man. But the rest of the task force consisted of Clash, Stewart, Tanaka, and Lucy. Tinsel watched the competition from the sidelines, still disappointed in her ability to get involved in the race. Heck, she even noticed Rick, Roger, Drac, and Captain Falcon there as well. However, surprisingly, there were no racers from Dark Million. She then grew very concerned. The signal interrupted her reverie and the race was on. Rick, EAD, and Jody were doing a decent job, though the Dragon Bird always kept getting its wings clipped by the persistent mighty hurricane. As the war raged on, despite her cheering for Rick, she still felt anxious, but not just for him. Meanwhile, the F-Zero Committee received an ultimatum from Zoda that they must let all the racers slow down and remain in the orange zone, otherwise they'd explode if they should go above or below it. It was in exchange for them to give Zoda all the profits to him. 10 million space credits! They grew worried for the pilots' welfare, even if they should run out of fuel. The best they can do is alert the Galaxy Platoon. Ugh, I think it's another reference to the movie Speed based on, Chapter 6, Black Shadow's Trap in GX. That's what I believe. Anyway, meanwhile, Tinsel, along with her comrades, received news of a sudden threat. All of the racers must maintain the said speed limit, as a sensitive detonator had been detected on each vehicle excepting for one. Of course, this wouldn't deter Rick nor Roger's ambition to win the race for Alias. They had a promise to keep, after all. Alarmed for Rick's sake, Tinsel caved into her anxieties and ran out of the base, disregarding Lucy or Clash's worries. While she was storming to her comet, she overheard Tanaka's cries while Stewart was more stern when he suspected there's some kind of transmitter within the racetrack, and they must find it and destroy it. With that objective in mind, Tinsel headed for a machine in the garage and made a distress call to Domino City again. According to Clash's analysis in the base, there were a total of 9 sensors, though he believed it all to be a hoax, not willing to give away the prize money. However, the machine exploded, showing the attack was real. Duelists! Tinsel steal us calling duelists! Yugi! Joey! The former picked up the call via a cordless phone attached to a wall. Recognizing her voice, Yugi was anxious on answering it. His eyes widened as he heard the bad news. Meanwhile, Falcon looked over the side of the track and saw a glare coming from the distant mountainside. The Blue Falcon leapt off the track, startling the spectators and even Mr. Zero. But unbeknownst to them, the machine was still attached beneath a course. He was on hot pursuit for the sniper, but something else caught his keen eye. He then punched around the motherboard, sending a transmission to Tinsel's key fob. She picked it up and noticed it was from him. Her face brightened, but the situation was grim. According to him, there was a blimp circling the track, figuring it has the transmitter for the activating sensors. Tinsel doubted, but then recoiled as the blimp never left the track and kept on orbiting it, never leaving a single advertisement, just monitoring the race without any glamour. Well, that could be very suspicious. So she went with Falcon's advice and passed it on to Yugi. Joey also wanted to tag along as well. Then her fob chirped when it received a map of sorts. Then she gave the schematics to Yugi. Yugi! Rick's under attack! Take the Mute City warp gate! Help me out here! I'm on my way, he said as soon as she received the location of Domino City's nearby warp gate. He and Jody ran out and summoned their duel monsters. For Yami, after transforming into the Pharaoh, he used his Curse of Dragon. I love that transformation. While Joey followed suit with his baby dragon. They immediately loaded their duel discs as they entered the gates and materialized discreetly, soaring over the Mute City track. Captain Falcon alerted the duo as soon as he saw them from upside down. Just before his machine reached a gap, he ordered them to find and destroy that blimp with their best monsters and stay discreet. They obliged and Yugi and Joey steered toward it. The Blue Falcon leapt toward it while the duelists followed. Captain Falcon reached the ends of the track before boosting, hurling his Blue Falcon through the air and straight towards the blimp, crashing into the command deck. The nose of the machine pierced through the airship, seeing a swarm of death soldiers drawing out their weapons surrounding the vehicle. Fireball attack! Yami shouted. Then the dragon unleashed its fury. It also unloaded a little passenger inside it. Joey drew out his time wizard and made his dragon age a century. The Thousand Dragon has emerged! Like his partner, the creature snorted and unleashed its own fiery fury, making them attack both sides and igniting the blimp. The invasion distracted the sentinels long enough for Karibo to enter the fray, glowed, and exploded the ship from the inside, making the Blue Falcon able to escape. It fell off, startling the duo, but thankfully it was caught in a large maw. Whoa! I remember this spaceship! That's the Falcon Flyer, Joey! Yami cheered as he made a fist. I should have known it'd be here. That'll put an end to this madness and save the F-Zero competitors. He composed. Tinsel was right. Dark Million is truly raising the bar. Oh man, I wonder how we can manage both dueling and this, Joey added, implying Tinsel's own angst. They watched the blimp drop and give off a dazzling display similar to a Viking's burning boat as it descended sharply toward the mountainside. The sniper, Pico, believe it or not, noticed the crash landing too. With his plan thwarted and his bombs destroyed, he became rampant as he scurried away and drove in his wild goose. Rick, slow down! That's an order! Jody shouted back at the base. Tinsel was still in the garage as she received a message of their success. While Dr. Clash held his head, never enduring the horrors, the Dragonbird accelerated and reached the finish line first. The crowd went wild for the victorious hero, but moments after the commotion, Roger slapped Drax squarely in the face for his betrayal. Turned out he was under scrutiny by Miss Killer demanding the ransom, and he needed to win the race for Roger's sake if he should explode. Roger reprimanded him to take his mind off of their business for once and focus on what truly matters, their partnership. Otherwise, it'll soon become strained. Kinda wish that would happen. Rick was also punished, but by Jody for disobeying orders and never slowing down during the fake star race, putting him and his colleagues in serious danger. Though she did praise him for his first place victory and receiving the 10 million space credits, he was still put on a long probation for about a month. This put Tinsel at complete unease as she heard the briefing, even when Clash was still puzzled picking up the sensor from Rick's machine. These sensors appear to be fake compared to the last machine that blew up. He examined it, no longer flashing. Stress was mounting and Tinsel blurted out, "They weren't fake, Dr. Clash. They were actually real. Didn't you see the other machine blow up? I should know because—" She gathered her thoughts, ignoring the squad's piercing looks. "Because I saw Falcon leap over the track, and he invaded a blimp overhead. Then he made it crash toward the mountain. I think a sniper was there activating these things." She motioned toward the sensor Clash was holding, still perplexed. "Well, looks like we owe him one, Tinsel," Jody said, although neither woman were pleased. She actually left out with the duelists' invasion to keep their identities safe. The last thing she wanted is to have them investigated for a possible murder. She was also very upset that the task force, Roger nor Drac, didn't notice them, as well as Rick receiving a hefty punishment despite keeping his promise to poor Alias. Just like in his last misadventure. It seems like whenever he helps Clash, he always gets in trouble. Why? Doesn't Jody care about him? Anyway, Tinsel began to carry a grudge for their fearless leader, but not before she saw Rick stargazing out a large window toward Roger's delivery vessel, with Alias and his mom riding shotgun while holding a Doria mango. He just smiled and wished him luck as Alias praised him. "Thank you for winning that race, Rick." This lap was a lot more tumultuous than the last one as the duelists Falcon and Tinsel got more involved. Like the last lap, it made me anxious to add the duelists in, and Falcon didn't give me enough assurance, since the tension was still mounting. Besides, having Clash never know the attacks and having Rick on a serious probation really pissed me off to no end. You see, despite the good deed in his victory, he still receives the bitter end of the stick from Jody. This, aside from his treatment in GP Legend, started my hatred for her. I'm not kidding. I really despised how Jody treats Rick all the time. Also, just for lulz, I'd probably add the catchy song, which you've heard in the intro. That song always give me the feels. Well, this lap was done, so off to the last one. Which is actually... Today is actually the air date of the final lap here in the trilogy, which is Uh, what's its name? Double Jeopardy, actually. So here it is. Wow, Yugioh has been making a lot of appearances in the series. 3 times in a row. This one takes place at the rare outer space circuit in the 10th lap of the anime. Well, actually, I should say the 11th. Not the AX Cup, but rather the Crystal Cup. I'm not including the Christmas Cup since that was an idea in the Japanese version. So here's the last lap in the tense trilogy. The final lap. Tinsel was assisting Rick, who was on janitor duty for his month-long probation. She had to make it quick since Jody didn't want her to do so since this was Rick's severe punishment. He disobeyed orders at that lethal incident in Mute City last week. Just then Dr. Clash came over, alerting Rick that the captain had something for him to see. He went to the large office Tanaka always hung out with, Tinsel following him. I got here as soon as I could, Jody. What's up? I have something interesting to show you, Rick. Both he and Tinsel grew curious as she inserted the golden cartridge embedded with the emblem of a falcon on it. A large plasma screen buzzed behind the two rookies as they looked up. On it were the schematics and the striking image of Miss Killer to the right and the moon shadow to the left. Both pilots were incredibly shocked as their minds flashed back to that incident when Rick was losing consciousness as he hardly saw her leap out of the window in his apartment. Tinsel also saw her escape A2 as she raced away on top of the Sonic Phantom. That's her. I'll never forget her face. Tinsel looked over to his best friend. She was the woman that attacked you? Yeah, definitely. I'll remember that face forever. Tinsel sobered as the thought. However, Tanaka was stupefied. After what she did, I don't blame you, Wheeler. Who is she, Jody? Her name's Luna Ryder. She's the new pilot who won the last F-Zero race. She then faced Rick. And I have evidence she's also working for Black Shadow. Rick was in shock. Then she warned him. She's entered in the Crystal Cup race. We've got to stop her. Right. Then he looked up at the flat screen again. So Tinsel was right after all. So she's not the damsel I once knew. She seems to be a very formidable opponent. Tinsel followed his gaze. Rick, do not let her intimidate you. Somehow I believe she is... Tinsel? Yeah, Jody? I know you'd be interested in the next race, for Wheeler's sake. But sadly, like the last race, last week, this one has also been overbooked. What? Oh no, not again! How could this happen? The racetrack takes place in the outer space circuit just above Earth and near the gateway. It's a popular and new attraction, but also experimental. This is a very special race, and spectators and pilots had enlisted rapidly. I had already recruited Rick, Lucy, Jack, and EAD. Dark Million would go all out on this one. I'll tell you what, since you're that concerned over Rick's welfare, I'll have you as one of the spectators instead. I'll be counting on you to keep a close eye out. Right. Thanks, Jody. Little did she know Jody had an ulterior motive, as this reminded the cyborg of another similar event. Tinsel was so ecstatic to be watching an actual race, only this was in space. Not only that, but the arena was pretty breathable, and the watchers were comfortably beneath some energy shields protecting the pilots in the brown circuit from devastating meteors. She was so excited as she had never heard of this track before. This is actually Outer Space Meteor Storm, which I found out from Ephraim's Let's Play of F-Zero GX, which actually had the AX Cup. So, this is part of that. She watched the competition as closely as possible, but the machines had already hidden themselves as they emerged into the ice tunnel. It was quite a shame, since Tinsel was barely able to see the spectacular blue tiles sparkle. A few moments later, the Dragonbird, Astro Robin, and the Blue Falcon finally rushed out of it, resulting in a tag between the former and latter machines. The track began to split in two. "Take the shortcut! Take the shortcut!" Tinsel cried. But the two warring cars dragged toward the longer route, while the Robin made its way, much to her dismay. However, a few moments made her cringe as she noticed the lethal Moonshadow taking Jack out of commission. "Come on, Rick, be careful! Don't let her catch you off guard!" The three vehicles were neck to neck, and Tinsel was nearly so into their battle that in her peripheral vision she noticed the shields dissipating. The deadly meteor showers began to fall onto the meteor storm track. "Oh no! How can this be happening? Rick, please be careful!" She almost instantly stood up, hoping to have a better vision of the Dragonbird, but the pilots were too far away, even for her nearsightedness. Which I am too, actually. She then started to panic, and her breathing went shallow. Then she desperately took out her secret weapon beneath her seat. The dual disc! The lethal rock show continued to bombard the course as it was too late to call the duelists again. They were so far away. In addition, exposure in space is just like an instant death. So it was up to her now. She stormed behind the rows of seats and drew a few monsters into her gizmo. Unlike last time, though, this was more accustomed to her skinny arms. Yugi and Joey regretted on giving her a large size earlier, but Tinsel had no choice. She immediately summoned several monsters at once, such as the giant soldier of stone, baby dragon, time wizard, red eyes darkness dragon, catapult turtle, Karibo, and the winged dragon, aka the guardian of the fortress. Everyone was positioned in attack mode, with the cards facing tall ways, while the soldier was positioned long ways, showing him in defense mode. She then hollered into the contraption, and the monsters obeyed. "Duel monsters! Protect the pilots from the devastating meteorites! Everyone, attack the falling rocks while you, Stone Soldier, defend from them!" The colossal golem roared as he stood up straight, bracing itself. The rest of the gang went all out toward the volley of deadly space rock. "Time Wizard! Use your time manipulation to slow down the meteors, and fast forward to transform the baby dragon!" She figured the docile creature won't stand a chance and perhaps cower beneath the onslaughts. So she figured the best way was to use his altered form just the way Joey did. "Time, magic," replied in a digital tone, its arms rapidly rotating, making the dual monster transform gradually into the Thousand Dragon. Its stats changed, displaying on Tinsel's disc. Then the clock rewound its arms as it faced the meteors, attempting to slow down the minutes. Tinsel figured that Dark Million can be behind this crisis, no doubt. Slow effects helped, but had little effect. However, the monsters were able to reach and break their targets a little easier. The winged dragon kept using its fireballs while avoiding other advances with ease. Thousand Dragon let out a volley of flames, disintegrating them, while the catapult turtle continually launched the expendable multiplying Karibo into the fierce melee. Darkness Dragon blended into the environment, making it a stealth fighter as it dodged some space rock while incinerating others, although Tinsel's troops weren't entirely invincible. Several times already, the monsters were hit by more meteors, and their life points kept dwindling, one after the other. Especially one particular spirit. The gallant giant was losing its stamina as it was in the line of fire, while towering over the pilots. But it still managed to hang in there. Then the worst was yet to come. Tinsel saw the black bull bash into the lead, heading straight for the three leading pilots. "Oh no! Black Shadow!" Sensing her fright, the duel monsters noticed the commotion and the humongous bringer of disaster. She wondered if he's responsible for letting this terror happen. She almost instantly canceled the thought of attacking it, what mattered most was, "Forget about the Black Bull! Protect the pilots!" They did just that as they bravely continued their valiance, but Tinsel was beyond terrified as she saw a large meteor head straight toward the rear of the track, and the three leading machines were heading for it. "Oh no! Wreck! Captain Falcon!" She didn't care too much of the moon shadow either. As if it heard her screams telepathically, the giant soldier of stone responded as it gazed toward the oncoming storm. While remaining in defense mode, it simply secured its feet deep onto the lower layer of the course and raised its arms over its head, bracing for the worst. Willing to sacrifice itself, it took the destructive onslaught like a tree as a few meteors hit its arms. Then the incoming large meteor impacted the giant's chest, and it roared in agony as it fell back toward the further portion of the road. Simultaneously, the signal went dead, and the pic faded, replaced by a red X. "I've lost the giant soldier of stone! No!" Tinsel sunk to her knees, never wanting to bear to see the pilots get murdered by the continuous storm, nor behold Black Shadow winning. If anything should happen to Rick, Lucy, Falcon, EAD, and all her monsters, she might... The monsters gave their all, but each one caved into the might of the meteors. She ran out of Karibo, leaving the catapult turtle nothing to launch. The Thousand Dragon was clobbered by a meteor, making it sink to the unforgiving terrain and separated into two. The Time Wizard with its gears popped out and Baby Dragon unconscious. Even the Darkness Dragon was eventually wiped out, and all that was left was the Winged Dragon. It still let out all its fireballs toward the line of fire, but was too exhausted to avoid any more. It gazed on an oncoming meteor, and Tinsel broke down. Then a miracle happened. While Tinsel was wallowing in her despair, the meteor stream became deathly silent. Even the audience as they beheld the devastated race. And the shields are back online again. Rumbles were heard above, and she nearly heard Mr. Zero tallying the results from the 7 laps the pilots made, although it turned out the Blue Falcon, Moon Shadow, and the Black Bull disappeared, with no signs of damage. The Guardian nuzzled her, and she gradually came to. She saw its toothy smile assuring her that it did its bidding. She barely listened to the cyborg's announcements, and the race had been cancelled due to severe track damage. She also saw the dragon bird safe and intact as its skinny black shadow robot crumbled into dust, while it left a wrecked machine. It seemed the Emperor of Brutality made a copy of itself to avoid the onslaughts. The Robin, Great Star, and Elegance Liberty were also unscathed. "And it's Lucy Liberty in her first F-Zero victory!" "Ah, no way! She did it!" Tinsel cried with glee. She withdrew the winged dragon card. Monster dissipated, she ran to the stadium. She was overjoyed Lucy won by default, even when she was giggling while Clash was cheering for her and raising her high. They eventually met up with Jack, EAD, and Rick as they carefully trekked back to the starting line. Moments later, they arrived at the Falcon house, and Bert set up the festivities specially for Lucy. "Guys, you didn't have to do this." "Sure we did, Lucy. Yeah, it's not every day you get to win an F-Zero race, you know." She simply just admired all the dazzling banners lighting up, and a tall strawberry cake towered over them at the center of the table. Tinsel could barely resist to eat some of it. In addition, a large red banner had white bold font saying, "Congratulations, Lucy." "Well, Lucy, here's to hoping it's the first of many. To Lucy! To Lucy!" Jack and Tinsel followed as they raised their glasses. "Congratulations, Lucy. Hear, hear." "Yeah!" The new champion and young apprentice just laughed with admiration. Little did the heroes know that this victory was only a blessing and a start to a curse. Especially some great tumultuous trials ahead for Tinsel. Dang! Finally got this trilogy of error out of the way at last. Well, that's it, futuristic racing fans. That's all the crossovers for F-Zero GP Legend and Yu-Gi-Oh! At least till my all-time favorite epic. The Lucy's victory is a sure sign of tremendous trouble for Tinsel, as it starts her curse on losing several races. She actually quits dueling and works for the task force full-time, and full-time actually, it should say, as Yugi and his posse deal with the Great Leviathan and a menacing 10,000-year curse. Plus, I'd rather hear the extended version, which you'll hear in a minute. There was an error here. The Red Ice Darkness Dragon was a dual monster that didn't belong in the original Yu-Gi-Oh, but rather GX. I saw an actual card, and I thought it was one of Joey's monsters, like a polar opposite to the Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. I was wrong, but I still thought it was a cool dual monster. Again, like the last two, it was tense as I thought my favorite pilots would be destroyed by the endless meteors. Heck, I thought that Zoda was actually killed when Black Shadow ripped off his yellow tube or whatever it was. But he wasn't. Damn. I wish he was. No Hyper Zoda. So, this is the prelude to Tinsel's Curse as well as my F-Zero epics ahead. Whew. I finally got all that crap out of the way. So, that's the tension of Trilogy of Tension for you. My all-time favorite F-Zero epic crossing over with Yu-Gi-Oh! Aside from Cold as Ice and Falcon's followers. I'll see you all next time, futuristic racing fans.
Yeah, drop the bomb. Just drop the bomb. Yeah, drop the bomb. Just drop the bomb. Get a sick and tired of fossil-like system. Now or never is a time to resist. It's easy to blast them all away. Go and trigger press about to say adios to today. Don't get me wrong, I'm a pacifist. The mind can do more than fist. Explosives are not what it takes. You know the terrorists always make these mistakes. What we gotta do is build momentum. If you need the right tools, invent them. Ride the wave, time, can't feel the rhythm. The march, the futures, we gotta get with it. The brain is generator almighty power. Either do it now, your massive plan goes sour. Yeah, it's already to take that fall. It's up to you to make that call to drop the bomb. Yeah, drop the bomb. Just drop the bomb. Let me see that bomb. Look for the second. Just build momentum. If you need the right tools, invent them. Ride the wave, time, can't feel the rhythm. The march to the futures, we gotta get with it. The brain is stereo